Jen spilled Pete all over herself. It's canon now.
I did not. That's not the pee story.
That's how the episode begins. Will, I pay your salary.
No, actually, if anything, we're very impressed. We're very impressed that Joe doesn't have pee all over him. So
that's
carry
true.
on with that, Joe.
As he is wont to be.
Whenever I see Joe, I give him a big hug.
Piss.
I give him a big hug and I go, God damn, you don't smell like urine, Joe. What a hell of a musk you've got. No urine at all.
Yeah, successful day.
What,
but that's
by the end of the summer last year, that's what they were saying to the president as a way of a compliment.
How did you today? No pee today. No pee today. Yeah.
No pee. No pee. He didn't
look at us we're being sensitive to Biden already. It took us
we're gonna do a lot of
45 seconds.
Okay. I'm not gonna refrain from senility jokes. I'll refrain from other medical jokes, but you can't ask me to.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm not gonna refrain from anything. So it's fine.
I look forward to your cancer jokes there, Jen.
Yeah. I am 3/4 of the way through the original Sin book.
You're fast.
It's an
Didn't
audio
it come
book,
out?
so I can make I can make Jake Tapper talk as fast as I want, and it's at 1.5. But I've been dedicating time just to listen to it. Yeah.
Should I explain why why we're proud of him for not having pee on him, or are we just gonna let that hang?
I think it's self-evident.
Yeah. I mean, do you want to prove the counterfactual that you should be proud that he does have pee on him?
I guess it's just something that we don't comment on every day. Like, I don't wake up and be like, good job not getting pee on yourself, husband. High five.
To quote Chris Rock, that's something you are supposed to do.
Yeah, but today was an exception.
About things you're supposed to do. I take care of my kids.
Well, that's what Joe was doing. So our dog might have kidney disease. And so he had to collect her pee. And so he followed her around this morning with a Tupperware. And luckily she did a handstand for him. And so in the view of a bunch of people, he collected her pee in a Tupperware and didn't get any on him. So we are very proud
of everybody involved. An acrobatic decision.
I've got a lot of Wallace's pee and Tupperware containers in my refrigerator so I can pass drug tests now that I'm in Washington, D.C. So I can get through those. Yeah. And they're like, wow, you're a very healthy mixed breed there, Heaton. No heroin in you. You can work for the FBI.
Yeah. Until your dog, like, while you're looking at something else, eats a small bag of cocaine and you get fired. You're like, what happened?
Yeah.
And you can't tell the difference because your dog's already a nut. So
he's
dangerous.
Been kind of on the mend the last couple. I was telling Justin before you hopped on. He's had kennel cough the last fortnight, and it turned into pneumonia over the weekend. And so I had to take him to the emergency room for a little bit scary and very expensive night that ended around 5 a.m. So he's pretty. Hold on, can you see him behind me? He's pretty.
Oh, yeah, he's chilling.
He's laying down.
He's just taking it easy. We went and played last night, so I think he's a bit worn out. We went to a playground and had a new game where I swing on the swings and he tries to chase me and then hump me if he catches me. So it was very fun for him. He might be worn out from that, but I think it's mostly pneumonia.
Oh, well, I hope he gets better soon. Did you get the pet insurance?
I'm going to get it because I looked into it per your advice, Jen. I looked into it and I did the math and I was like, I'd have to spend a lot of money for this to ever work. Like, and then I keep spending that money. And I even with the rates going up every year, Wallace will do some damn like he'll like attack a garbage truck or he'll like get a peg leg. I don't know. Like I should probably just get the pet insurance at this point.
Yeah. Impale himself on another stick. Like he's a vampire and Buffy at the same time.
Yeah.
Your dog is not a genius.
No.
He is a tank though.
Yeah.
If he were a human, he'd do a lot of cocaine. He'd be like somebody who casually does cocaine, like on a level that you're like kind of uncomfortable about, but they seem very, very regular. And you're like, well, I don't know. Is that normal? Do I have to readjust what I think about cocaine? It's a personality type I like to call everyone I've met in advertising.
And Florida.
Most people in Florida. But no, but the difference is that they don't have suits on. So I know the damaging effects that cocaine has on them. You're wearing, flip-flops as you go to your job.
I would love to see an index of films that were written while on coke in the 80s. Mm-hmm. Like if somebody ever kept a comprehensive list, I think it would explain a lot. Where you're like, okay, all right, how about this? Give her 3 boobs on Mars or whatever, right? Like I could see that being an explanation for certain stuff.
Was that for the movie? Was that not in the original?
I've not read
adapted,
Total Recall,
right?
but I think Total Recall is actually a short story. I think.
Oh, is it?
And I don't think that there's a 3-breasted woman.
No 3 titties in the short story.
No, I've read a lot of Philip K. Dick, and he always has very slim brunette women who are incredibly cruel. The characters are just cruel and very thin. So I don't think he'd have the 3-titted woman.
No, that'd be a more John Milius thing.
Yeah.
Okay, book nerds, let's start the show.
From Austin, Texas, I'm Justin Robert Young. From Southern California,
I'm Jen Briney.
And from our nation's capital, Washington, D.C.,
I'm Andrew Heaton.
And we're not wrong on this edition of the program. We're going to be talking about President Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.'s cancer, as well as all of the revelations from said Original Sin book and whether or not they intersect, as well as Harvey Weinstein reemerging on the Candace Owens show, a jailhouse interview, a sympathetic jailhouse interview for Harvey Weinstein, Democratic mega donor when he was on the outside, with conservative influencer Candace Owens, just to show you where we are in our modern culture. All that plus your emails. Jen, how is your volleyball sojourn going in Southern California?
It's going really well. My biggest concern here was that I wouldn't meet people fast enough to be able to play all that much. It took me a week to now get to the point that I could play 7 days a week. And then this weekend we took it a little far. So my body wasn't really working all that well as of yesterday, because on Saturday I burned almost 2,000 extra calories, and then it was 1,400 and 1,400 the following 2 days. And so my body yesterday was like, you need to stop. I know you're having fun, but you need to stop. So I'm feeling much better today, but we're having a blast. The weather's been extraordinary. Yeah, I'm loving it out here. It's great living in a place where I don't have to drive, because we bought bicycles. And so I can go grocery shopping and meet up with people, and everything's along the sand. And so, yeah, I haven't been behind the wheel of the car in a few weeks. It's just been lovely. I like it a lot.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah, I'm happy right now.
Heaton, how about you? How are you?
I'm good. I've been playing a lot of volleyball.
Volleyball, huh?
Yeah. It's pronounced with a B on the East Coast. Yeah. Playing a lot of volleyball. Yeah, I'm well. No major developments on my end.
That's
certainly nothing illegal.
Jesus.
Yeah. No, everything's fine.
Oh my God.
Let's move on.
I'm well. Let's move on. Like,
yeah.
I'm going to text you the fucking hotline number. Jesus. You just fake it better. Let's talk about Joe Biden's cancer. What a segue. This Sunday, former President Joe Biden announced that he had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has metastasized to his bones. The cancer is characterized by a Gleason score of 9, indicating a high-grade, rapidly spreading disease. The diagnosis reignited scrutiny over a 2022 speech in which Biden stated, I and so damn many other people grew up have cancer. At the time, the White House clarified that he was referring to past non-melanoma skin cancers that had been removed before his presidency. Although now with the new news, there is a question of exactly when he first found out. Critics, including Donald Trump and his allies, have suggested a possible cover-up, questioning whether Biden's health issues were concealed during his presidency. A new book, Original Sin, alleges that Biden's inner circle may have downplayed cognitive and physical decline in the latter days of his presidency and candidacy for a second term. Biden and his family are currently reviewing treatment options, with his office emphasizing that the cancer is hormone sensitive and manageable. And I would like to state right now, for the record, that the We're Not Wrong program takes cancer very seriously and wishes Joe Biden well in his treatment. What follows is a frank discussion of the subject. If you believe that it is disrespectful to have a conversation about this person and this disease, then I would encourage you to skip to the next segment. We'll be talking about sunnier things like Harvey Weinstein. However, we will now pause while I ask the following question. Andrew Heaton, did Joe Biden have cancer while president, and did he know about it?
He probably did. Whether he knew about it or whether anybody knew about it is very much up for debate. I don't know a whole lot about prostate cancer. This is a pretty good Dunning-Kruger type thing where, usually prostate cancer develops very slowly. I'm sure there are exceptions to it. I don't know all the ins and outs of this. I don't know that anybody does. Whether or not he had prostate cancer while he was president is, I think, fairly immaterial. We can say definitively that he would have been too old to serve through his office, probably. I mean, this sounds like it's pretty bad. We're all wishing him the best, but the likelihood that he's going to be in tip-top shape by the end of this term is very minimal. So it was a good call. It was a good call that Biden dropped out early in the race, allowing the Democratic Party time to compensate and go through a competitive primary. So whether he knew about the prostate cancer, I don't know. This doesn't really change the equation for me at all, because I do think that there was a cover-up of his mental health. That seems to be one. I don't know. I remember seeing his brains leak out his ears like motor oil on national television at Justin's house. A lot of us saw that. But there was an attempt prior to that to shield everybody to it. And that part, regardless whether he has prostate cancer or not, his brain was slowing down. And that seems to be that was a cover up where people that were in his life prioritized personal loyalty over the good of the party and the good of the country.
Have you read Original Sin or any of the excerpts that?
No, I want to talk to you about it because I'm really curious. Like, I don't follow Jake Tapper on CNN, but did he talk about this shit when he was doing his job on CNN the preceding 4 years? Because I feel like you're supposed to just tell the news as it comes out. Like, if I were doing a daily show and I just refrained from telling everybody what was going on, and then I wrote a book, it was like, hey, you've been wondering what's happened in the 4 years? I wasn't telling you what I was doing in the news. Buy my book, and you can find out the shit I did. That strikes me as weird. But my guess is he just slapped his name onto the other guy because he could sell more books.
I mean, I will say that by their daily habits, only one of the two people whose name is on the book writes nonfiction regularly. The other guy talks on television and writes fiction books. But we'll get to that in a second. Jen, do you believe that Joe Biden knew he had cancer while he was president?
What really sucks is I wouldn't put it past him. I wouldn't. Based on everything that we know about the way they hid, and they didn't hide it. That's the thing. Like, they didn't do a good job of hiding the fact that he was really old and losing it mentally. But the way they lied about that, which we could actually see, would I put it past them to lie about prostate cancer? I wouldn't. I don't trust them to that level. And I think that explains some of my reaction when I heard about it, because I know what I'm supposed to say is I heard about it and I'm so sad and I feel so bad for the family. My reaction was, that selfish son of a bitch. Because what would have happened had he won the election is right now we would be sitting with the decision of, once again, do we have to push Joe Biden out of office because his ego, he's going to say, like, I believe that he would have sat here and been like, oh, I have cancer, but I can be president.
I can handle it. Yeah.
Yeah. That's where we would have been. We would have been in kind of the same primary situation. Like, are we going to have a President Harris or not? Like, he was setting us up for that situation. By running again, and to have that news at the same time that we're dealing with so much Trump chaos, like, I'm just so angry at him and his family that I don't know if that's an irrational reaction for me to have, but I didn't have the weepies for the Biden family. I just feel like you are a selfish group of people. He was the president of the United States. I did find out that in 2019 he had an enlarged prostate, and yet still didn't get these tests. Why? So with the access to doctors that he had.
They're not recommended for men over 70 because the idea is that many men are going to get prostate cancer, but it grows so slowly and it would affect you so slowly that something else would probably kill you before you got to the point where it would actually damage something. But
which is causing cognitive dissonance up here because you say that. And yet we're supposed to believe that this is so fucking aggressive that it wasn't there 5 months ago. So which is it? Does it grow slowly or fast? I don't know. I'm not a doctor.
Yeah. Also, most men are not the president of the United States with the most sophisticated technology you could possibly have to discover things like this on a level that nobody else could probably afford to, let alone afford to and have the priority from the medical community.
There's also that.
There's that.
So, I mean, I'm not thrilled with this news, but at the same time, Joe Biden's no longer the president. We do have an elderly president who doesn't tell us his medical records, who is obese, if not morbidly obese, eats a lot of McDonald's to this day. I'm more interested in his health at this point, where we're not getting answers. Like, we're still at the point where, like, how dare Joe Biden not tell us these things? Well, Trump is not telling us these things. So I would like to see more of the focus put on the crazy man who's in the office now. But I'm pissed at the Bidens because I think it's their fault that he's in office now.
I would like to read the doctor's assessment of Trump again. Like, remember in 2016 when he ran and he had his doctor with his crazy hair write him a medical assessment that said he is the fittest presidential candidate in all of American history. Like he's in better health than Teddy Roosevelt. Like right now, it would be like he has the most supple, strong prostate of any man I've ever put my finger in the butt of. His prostate could cure world hunger. It's big, but not engorged. It's just the right amount of meaty. I don't know. It'd be fun to read the press release.
Well, he just did one.
If you think that this man doesn't have an absolute secretariat level powerhouse of a prostate, then explain my broken index finger.
Well, the Trump people just released a report within the last few months claiming that he was about the same size as DK Metcalf, who is a badass Seattle Seahawks football player.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Said, did he get traded? Whatever. But 6'3", 225. Like, no.
An absolute specimen. Yeah. He actually has the same height and weight of Derrick Henry, one of the most durable and bruising running backs in the history of the NFL.
Quick question. Does it make a difference if it's muscle mass or fat in terms of the weight to height ratio? Does it not matter?
I don't know. And this is part of my thing. I've gotten a lot of shit from people because I had a similar reaction that Jen had, except I had to do a podcast on Sunday as this news broke. And so I put my immediate reaction on tape and then released it to the public, which was highly skeptical about a lot of this. And I got a lot of shit for it. And the reason why is partially because of people making the second point that Jen made, which is cool. Also, what happens to the guy who's actually president right now? To which I would say, if you do care about medical records and their provenance, so we know the health of the American president, then it is a pretty cost-free thing to do right now, especially if you're on the left hand of the dial, to say, no, this was horrible. We need to know more, and we need to know more because I want to know more about Trump. And so I would tend my own garden so I can then go across the aisle, because we live in a highly polarized world right now. You're going to have very, very few opportunities where you can go after somebody on your own side of the aisle that obviously hid stuff and say, this is important and here's why it's important. Here's a framework for which I think that we should have. And I don't think that you would be, especially now on the right side, people are not super concerned about Trump's health. So you might be able to get them to agree, at least rhetorically, or at least in terms of the sphere of influence of conversation, that there should be some level of independence to health things, or at the bare minimum, if we're not going to get full physicals, that you could say, hey, can we agree to a baseline level of a battery of tests that are publicly reported? And we can start with PSA tests, which measure the prostate cancer. You could say, hey, on the bare minimum, can we get a red light, yellow light, green light? You don't have to say exactly what it is, but something that is directly reported to the people. And if you don't do that, then we're just going to go back and forth between these people. And if you look at the trajectory of how much older these politicians are getting, by the way, is this the 4th or 5th Democratic congressperson that's died in office this term?
It's a
today.
third,
Jerry Connolly,
point
third.
made. Yeah. Point made.
Like these are things that should be reported. They should be known by the public. And especially when it comes to cancer, look, CEOs of companies don't stay on that are publicly traded when they have cancer and they have to go through this, which brings me to this point. I don't know this, right? So this might be a little conspiratorial. Let me just tell you about a screenplay I'm writing about an American president and a family that had a son that was the Attorney General of Delaware who had brain cancer. And they decided, because they believed that this Attorney General of Delaware could one day be president, that they would hide the brain cancer diagnosis. And even after that Attorney General from Delaware had a scar on his head that was visible, they lied, got a doctor to say that he had a clean bill of health and said that it was just a lesion on his brain, then traveled him around the country to get experimental treatments under a fake name so they could hide the fact that he had brain cancer. They eventually revealed it, and 12 months later, that son was dead. Now, the father, eventually, after a long stint in politics, becomes president. And in 2022, he makes a joke on an open mic, or says on an open mic that he has cancer. It's explained away as, well, he's just saying something about something else. Meanwhile, everybody around him says around 2022, his condition rapidly declines, even from 2020. It rapidly declines. All of a sudden, he's falling down more. His gait becomes stiffer. He's forgetting things on a level that he hadn't before.
Looks like a skeleton.
Looks like a skeleton. The treatment, the hormone treatment for prostate cancer is testosterone suppression. The two things that happen when you suppress testosterone, especially in a man of his age, in this screenplay I'm writing, is you fall down more and you forget things. Now, it's around this time in my screenplay that everybody around this president locks down access to the point where his cabinet secretaries barely talk to him, his White House team barely talks to him, his campaign barely talks to him. The only people that talk to him are 3 people that have been with him since the 70s and his family. And they suppress information from him because, and this is, again, in a screenplay I'm writing, they assume that if they do the treatment in 22, he'll be better by 24. He's going to run. He has to run. He's the only person that can beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump's still in my screenplay. But he's the only one who can beat him. They need him, but he'll be better by 24. And then he's not. And then everything falls apart. And now he has to lie about the fact that he just found out he has this prostate cancer, which is now spread to his bones, for which it is laughable to assume that he just found out about it. Like, that is absolute. In fact, in my screenplay, it's a joke. Everyone laughs. They say it and the world laughs in unison. So anyway, that's my.
What's the name of your screenplay?
Joe Biden. The Joe Biden
story.
Yeah, because even if he didn't get the prostate screening, there's
which
still
is a
blood
joke.
tests.
It's a joke that he didn't get it. Like,
but
on.
There would be blood tests. This stuff shows up on blood tests. Like, I don't trust these people at all. So
that it got to the bone, and that was the thing, and that's in Original Sin, the whole Bo stuff. But that's real. They got no joke. They got a doctor to disgrace himself by saying that a man that he knew had brain cancer just had a lesion removed from his head. Like, they hit it. They have consistently used medical maladies to their political advantage, the Biden family. Some of the stuff that Hunter does in this book, which, by the way, one of my favorite parts.
Does Hunter at least come out looking good? I feel like he's had bad rap the rest of the time, but like, did they have like a fold out section for his art?
One of the greatest moments of unintentional comedy in political history was denied us because one of the ways that Hunter Biden wanted to promote his addiction memoir that eventually, by the way, got him convicted on a gun charge and it was about to get him convicted on a tax charge. He wanted to promote it in black churches in South Carolina because he assumed they'd be able to relate to him as a crack addict.
Stop.
Nice.
Yes.
Wow.
I would love to see the opening
even
remarks.
the Biden family was like, Jesus, Hunter, no, you're not allowed to do that.
What a family.
He apparently was the chief architect of saying, Dad, they're going to make me relapse. Like he was the one saying, you have to fight this. You have to fight this. You have to fight this. I might relapse. I might relapse. I might relapse. Like that is emotional blackmail that is low, even for that family. Like that is absolutely disgusting to do to a father. I just find it laughable. I find it laughable to even imagine. And it also makes more sense. To be totally honest, it explained more of his presidency to say they were covering up cancer and they were doing this hormone treatment. And that's why they needed the secrecy. That's why Joe was so sidelined, because he's a proud dude. I don't imagine that he would, even if he was just declining, he would be out there barking, doing whatever he wanted. But if he had something to hide. Oh, also, this is also in my screenplay. There's a scene where the Secretary of Defense is in the hospital and he's not telling anybody. And the president's like, well, I can't fire him because then it would be hypocritical because they know that I'm keeping this medical secret. So we're all just going to keep medical secrets and no one's going to lose their job.
Yeah. That's
another part of my screenplay called Joe Biden, What I Think Really Happened by
Justin, can I make one tiny suggestion to your screenplay?
Yeah, go ahead.
Musical. Make it a musical.
Of course, that's your note.
Prostate the musical.
You just
the Joe Biden story.
You just want to play Hunter.
I want to play the prostate. I want to be an anthropomorphic prostate that comes out and is like, I am making pee. Like that's gonna be me, and I'll be this like weird character that comes out and sings and stuff, and it'll be this interlude.
No, you're gonna be my King George from Hamilton character. Like you have
wake up, it's 3 a.m. I have to pee now.
you have one song, but it crushes.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, your theory makes sense, Justin. It really does. And it makes me so much angrier than I was even when we started this episode.
If you want to get angry, read that book. That book
also, side note, Scott Adams is dying.
Yeah.
Did you know this?
Who's that?
Creator of
Dilbert Man.
Like the cartoonist?
The cartoonist. And the last 10 years pundit. He's got the same thing, I think. Like he had prostate cancer that went to his bones. Yeah. He's been a right-wing pundit for a while now. He's an extraordinarily talented dude, and I would recommend to anybody. He wrote a book called How to Lose Everything and Win Big. That is how to fail at nearly everything and still make it big, which is probably the best self-help book I've ever read. It's a really good book, and I'd also recommend Loser Think, which I thought. Because Loser Think they intentionally marketed to look very Trumpy. I thought it was just going to be a bunch of Trumpy bullshit. Also a very good book. He's a great writer. He's a really great writer and very
talented writer.
I don't agree with his politics, but I will say he's one of very few people that is coming up with original thoughts on a regular basis. Most people, myself included, are usually rearranging existing thoughts in novel patterns and promoting them. He's an innovative thinker. I'm sad that he's dying.
He's one of those guys that I think part of the reason why legacy media is dying at the level that it's doing is because it's fundamentally uninteresting. And part of the reason why it's uninteresting is that you can totally assume everything they're going to say by the title of it, regardless. It's like the words might as well be ChatGPT because you know exactly what you're going to get from the Washington Post or from the New York Times or anything else. And part of the reason why it's so predictable is because you've essentially bled out a generation of conservative talent that would usually be the spice, even if by and large a thing tilts a certain way. As soon as Trump came in, all the Republicans and conservatives became never Trumpers, which essentially was delivering the same message as the liberal thinkers. And one of those people, I would say Scott Adams, Ben Shapiro, and Charlie Kirk are three people that found themselves creating their own fiefdoms on the internet, but in another world should have been the conservative voice in the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the New York Times, because they are interesting. If you get beyond the clips that you see that get circulated, they're the kind of thing that would incite a lot of people to write in and say you're wrong or incite conversation. And that's what I think a lot of media has lost.
Can we talk about Gerald Connolly for a second?
Let's talk about
Because I'm
him.
mad at him too.
This one's actually dead. So you were mad at Joe Biden.
Jen,
who has
can
cancer.
you
This guy
please,
died.
because I don't know as much about him, and also I've got a very short attention span. Can you express this in the form of a screenplay?
You remember him actually from the DNC because
Is he
remember
that
when
guy I hit?
No.
Because I just kept driving, and I've never felt good about that.
No, he's the one who had me sitting in that chair waiting for him for 2 hours. Remember when I was just like waiting for a Congress, like Gerald Connolly, first of all, came up to me, which was weird, and then said hello. And then I said, can I interview? And he said, yes, I have somewhere to be, but wait right here. I'll be right back and we can do the interview. And 2 hours later, I gave up. So, you know, I find him rude for that, but that's not why I dislike him. The reason I really wanted that interview is that he was on the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee. And I had done a bunch of episodes about stuff going on in that committee that I wanted to ask him questions about. Earlier this year, they were trying to decide who would be the top Democrat on that committee. And it was between him and AOC, who, by the way, is the best performer in that committee. She asks the best questions. She's always the most prepared. She is better than Gerald Connolly, hands down. But because he's like old and besties with Pelosi, he got the gig. He also found out that he had an aggressive form of cancer, didn't resign, and then died in office yesterday. And so instead of resigning when he found out about this in the beginning of the term, here we sit in May of 2025. And now, instead of the balance of the House being 220 to 215, which is what it would have been had 3 Democrats not been sick and died in office. Now they're sitting at 220 to 212, and who knows how long that's going to be. And I think one of the reasons why the Democrats aren't going to go full blown, people need to tell us their medical records, is off the top of my head. I can think of 2 more Democrats in the House who have cancer, which is Jamie Raskin of Maryland and John Garamendi of California. I'm pretty sure there's 2 more, but I can't remember who they are off the top of my head. This is a problem in the Democratic Party of allowing people who are sick and entirely too old to serve. And when they find out that they're going to be out of office for months because they're in treatment or they're having dementia or whatever it is. We now, actually, someone sent me this morning. There have been 8 Democrats in the last few years that have died in office. Like we all remember Dianne Feinstein. Mm-hmm. So this is a problem in the Democratic Party that doesn't stop with Joe Biden. And we just had another example. In fact, I think the Gerald Connolly thing in this moment is actually worse because he was in power. Joe Biden, we at least got him out. Like there's no power here. He's a private citizen. It's over. Gerald Connolly, we needed his votes in the House. And so he's gone. And there's a few more that are sick as well. And we don't know the extent of their situation. So the Democratic Party needs to really decide, are they for medical transparency or not? And their behavior so far indicates that they're not, which would make them total hypocrites if they were to make the very valid point that Donald Trump has not been straightforward with us. So I just needed to say that. When I found out he died this morning, I'm like, you got to be fucking kidding me.
Is his prostate okay?
I think that goes with him. He's was the representative of Fairfax County, Virginia. So he was in Northern Virginia.
That'd be my guy.
Congressman.
Okay.
So your congressman.
Time
So
for me to
you
move
are
in like a hermit
unrepresented.
crab. I'm just going to run into the Congress, go, I got this, gang.
Well,
Yeah.
you're unrepresented for a while because of his selfishness.
If only Northern Virginia had a say in the federal government. But still, your point is well made. It's amazing that we've had 3 of them within, this period of time.
Well, and one of them, we can't remember his first name because he was in office for such a short amount of time because he himself replaced a Democrat who had died in office.
Who died. Yeah.
You can't write this shit.
My brain is so sicko mode right now politically that my only thought was, does this affect the vote for the big, beautiful bill? Like, let me check the margins on whether or not, because it depends on who shows up because they might vote over the weekend and people might leave for Memorial Day and blah, 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 blah.
But every vote counts. And they've had 3 drop dead.
I think that they have 3 now to spare theoretically that Republicans do. So take Massey out, take Chip Roy out, and then I guess they might have 1 more that they could play around with. But I don't know whether or not this would add a 4th to it. Who knows? But no, I mean, in terms of the medical stuff, look, either we're going to care about this stuff or we're not. It's the same thing with the stock stuff, where it's like both parties do it. This is not right now. The Democrats are catching the wave of it, but it's not like Republicans have a great history of hale and healthy members of the House and Senate that are in fit as fiddles and are doing burpees before they go into committee meetings. This is a problem, and either we care or we don't. And that's my issue with like the partisan stuff, is that this is bipartisan in general, unless you are an absolute volunteer surrogate or you're getting paid to be a part of this political dialogue. You should care that even if your representative isn't your cup of tea politically, you would like for them to be alive and functioning, if even just so they can represent things that are closer to you. And if we don't care about
counterpoint
it, then
here?
Let's go.
Counterpoint. Listen, we're the good guys. Don't worry. We're the good guys. Listen, we got this. It's okay. Okay. I don't like to brag about this, but I was governor of California during the COVID thing.
Yeah.
And I had all these restrictions in place where you couldn't go out to restaurants and things. I could, because I'm smart. So it doesn't apply to me. Right?
Yeah.
So like, don't worry about it. Just, leaders are good. Just accept authority.
Mitch McConnell is glitching out. So let's not pretend that this is just a one side of the aisle. We're the good guys thing.
Absolutely not.
I think we need to have a serious conversation in this country about age limits on both ends. Because right now, you can't run for president if you're under a certain age. You can't run for the House if you're under 25. And yet you can stay in office when your faculties have severely declined. Like, I think and what's unfortunate about this is just like with the stock trading, Americans agree that they shouldn't be allowed to trade stocks, but the people who are doing it and benefiting are the people that need to make that law. We're in the same predicament here, that these elderly people in the House and Senate, they need to vote themselves out and pick an age that's probably below where they want it to be. I personally think 70, 75 is the max. I think 70, but I'll compromise on 75. But it's past time because they're not retiring. I would say whenever doctors agree that you shouldn't get prostate exams because you're otherwise just going to die of something else, that a buzzard's going to swoop down and eat your head instead of the prostate cancer killing you. That would be 70.
I think you're only going to get this to work one way, which is you grandfather everybody in. So like yay term limits, all that stuff, right? But I think the way to get
everybody
it done,
now, you're allowed to go forever.
You're all elder statesmen. Don't worry about it. Doesn't apply to you. Yes. You can be here till you're 100. But everybody coming in though, either as I wonder. Like part of me, the issue.
That's how hockey did it with helmets. You could still not wear a helmet because they went without helmets for years. And then they're like, you know that these things are missiles. Like you're going to have your brain split open. But the only way they were allowed to enforce helmets was to grandfather everybody who played before the rule. You were allowed to not have a helmet for as long as you wanted. So like well into the 80s, there were people that were skating around without helmets because they were grandfathered in.
See, I wonder if there'd be a way to do it in terms of cognitive assessment, because my the real issue is the person capable of doing the job, and are they apt to be in good health? So if you had like an objective assessment, but I'm worried that you'd be able to get that objective assessment. Like if you had
look at Trump's doctor. Why?
You'd either have to have like a Republican doctor and a Democratic doctor that hated each other or something.
Yeah. I don't think it can be subjective. I think it just has to be an age.
You'd be friends with a guy because, he's a Democrat, but I'm Republican. We play the same pickleball team. Yeah, probably.
It's all about having people retire gracefully, right?
Yeah.
If you have a doctor say like this person's cuckoo, like that's not something that they're going to be willing to do. But if you say, well, I'm aging out, I've hit the 70 mark, you get to have your party and you get your gold watch or whatever the fuck we do for these people and send them off to wherever they're going to be with their millions of dollars. That I think is a more dignified way to get them out of these positions of power, as opposed to, well, sir, you're kind of old. We need to take away your keys. Like the lack of dignity in having doctors involved, I think would make it really hard.
I don't know that you actually would need age limits if you had term limits. Most of the people that we're discussing that stick around till they're 80 got there when they were 50.
Yeah.
So if you just said like you can be in the Senate 2 terms and you can be in the House a total of 12 years, or we work something out, right? You can be in Congress for a total of 15 years, then you have to leave. You can slice it up however you want, something like that. I think it would probably take care of itself in that you would get the occasional person that runs at 70 and wins, but it'd be rare. And most people would just end up retiring.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people that we're talking about as problematic now couldn't be there if there were term limits. So point well taken. That works too.
Term limits, I think, are a little stickier. At 70, look, people are going to kiss your ass because they're going to want they're going to want to be endorsed by you. That's a good thing for a 70-year-old person.
You can still be a lobbyist.
Yeah, normally, the worst thing is you get to be John Boehner and just be a super goated lobbyist who is, making a ton of money and you get to write a book. And meanwhile, again, everyone's going to want your endorsement. They're just going to be listening to your stories, talking about how you're great and amazing, and they've started your career. It brings me back. I just heard this part of Original Sin that I had forgotten. Ari Emanuel, who is the inspiration of the character Ari from Entourage, if you remember that, Jeremy Piven's character from Entourage. He's a real guy.
I love him.
Billionaire, founder of WME, the gigantic talent agency. And right after the debate, he had been screaming apparently behind the scenes about how Joe Biden was too old for months. And so after the debate, he has this conference called like the Power Player Conference or something. And he's being interviewed by Tina Brown. And Tina just tees him up. And I remember this video clip when it was there. In fact, Will, if you could find it, you can play it, and I'll just tell these guys what it is.
Well, I'm pissed off at the founding fathers. They had the start date of 35. They just didn't give us the end date. Well, everybody died, so they didn't have to give the end date. I mean, I cannot believe we're in this situation.
Well, as one of the great disruptors in your career, I mean, do we have to sit by and sleepwalk?
It's a legal issue now. You're not in, I'm going to resign, unless the lawyers tell you something else, and maybe there's some wiggle room. I haven't seen it, and I'm not a lawyer, but we're in fuck city.
That's amazing.
And that's, I think it's hard to pry people away from power. And it's better to have rules about when you can stay and go. I don't know if term limits are ever going to happen. I'm more sympathetic.
I think they're more likely. I think if you did it, you grandfathered people in, you could get it. Like, I think you could get term limits if you grandfathered everybody in. I think it might even be easier than age limits because then you wouldn't have anybody holding out because of ageism or ableism or anything like that.
I disagree. I think age limits are very simple. And I think term limits, I still strongly believe in the idea that if someone is serving you well, we should have the ability to keep them. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the people that have been served by Bernie Sanders would agree with that.
Would you get rid of term limits on the president?
No, I mean, we have term limits where we have it. I'm not trying to free anyone to stay in there longer, but there has been a long time movement for term limits that has gone nowhere, where we have this spotlight right now on the age of the presidency that I think gives us a political moment to say we have age limits on the bottom, putting them at the top just makes sense. So I actually think age limits, I don't see any reason not to do age limits where I can see an argument for not doing term limits.
I think you could do it with Trump because Trump would just call it the Joe Biden law. Yeah. And he would then be able to be like, I was the oldest president. No one will ever be older than me.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's do it.
The other thing you could do too, like you could exert incredible political power right now without actually having to do a law, in that the Republican National Committee or the DNC could go, we are no longer formally endorsing any candidate over the age of X. Just like in our own purposes for our own primaries, you will no longer get support if you do this particular thing. Then you'd have a party that was actually able to like say, we're putting our weight into this, as opposed to sort of lip service and then backing away, which is what they both do.
I think the DNC putting their weight into the primaries has been a long time problem, and I'm not trying to have them do that any more than they already are. And also,
they can't even decide whether or not they're going to do it because they have a guy who's currently in there that wants to be primarying sitting members that they're going to kick out. Like they have no idea. They're a mess at the DNC right now, and that's before we even get to the DCCC, which is essentially just a political arm for Nancy Pelosi. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the other thing. It's like Nancy Pelosi is a great example of somebody that probably should be out of there. But part of the reason why she stays in there is because she's a power broker. And it's hard to dislodge.
Stock tips. That's real.
It's hard to dislodge a node of power from any system. And this is nothing to do with parties or anything. It really doesn't have anything to do with politics. This is society. When you have a thing that works, people don't want to rip out a thing because they're afraid that it might not work anymore. Republicans are going to find this out when Donald Trump leaves the White House, that he might be the only person that can hold together the coalition that had them win a national election. That might not be the case going forward. And so they're going to be hard pressed to find that. And Nancy Pelosi is somebody that like could force Joe Biden off the stage. Is there anybody else? Like, for as much as this show has been unkind to Nancy Pelosi, if you were cheering when Joe Biden left that race, it is worthwhile to think that it might not have happened if Nancy Pelosi was not organizing the Julius Caesar stab party that eventually made him tap out.
Justin, is Dean Phillips going to come back now? Because like we were up there in New Hampshire watching, we were at the Dean Phillips event, and he struck me as like just a very folksy Midwestern Bernie Sanders. Like he was on the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, but he's very nice. And everybody's like, how dare you? How dare you, you traitorous bastard? And like, so he didn't run for re-election, but he was completely correct in all of his assessments.
Turns out 100% correct. And nicer.
Yeah. Is he going to be rehabilitated now, or is like it doesn't matter?
He's already on the podcast circuit.
Yeah. Media wise, I like to, with these books, what I like to do is find the winners and losers, because really what these books tend to be, like Original Sin, are the best way to explain them is imagine you have an office drama situation. Everybody's had one at some time. There's a big kind of mini scandal that happens, drama that happens in the office. Imagine somebody was writing a book about that and they interviewed everybody that was involved. Who would, by consensus, be the person that everybody agreed was mostly to blame? Who would be the people that might be to blame, but we all like them, so we're not going to talk trash about them? That's what these books are. The person that comes out the cleanest in every single one of these books that I've read is Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips is a perfect cherubic little angel who dared Jimmy Stewart.
I voted
like
for Biden. I think Biden's a great man. I voted for him. I supported him. But it's time to pass the torch on to somebody else. Yeah.
He got hellfire. He got. I mean, it is worth remembering that there were 3 people that publicly had money behind them that ran against Joe Biden to create some semblance of a primary in New Hampshire. That was Dean Phillips, Marianne Williams, and RFK Jr. Dean Phillips got crushed. They ran a campaign to not only smear him, but ruin his political career, make him pay publicly so nobody else would dare speak out. And now he's out of politics. Marianne Williams is Marianne Williams. She's going to do a Marianne Williams thing. So I don't really know if she's affectable. She's going to just keep doing what she was doing. And RFK Jr., they chased not only out of the race, they chased out of the party. And he's now in the opposite party in the cabinet of the current president who beat the person that replaced Joe Biden. So I don't think that you did yourself much of a favor if you were the Democratic Party to do what you did, let alone not have a primary. But then for the people that did dare to step out, instead of just letting that do whatever it was going to do, Joe Biden should be able to beat Dean Phillips. He should. The sitting president should be able, you don't need to smear him and run him out of politics.
Oh, I forgot. Wait, hold on. I forgot that one because Biden also hadn't registered for the New Hampshire primary because he'd made some deal where they
changed the primary schedule.
We're not making New Hampshire the first one. And New Hampshire was like, fuck you. This is all we have. We're doing it. And so then Biden had to come in and be like, all right, do me as a write-in candidate. And he did win, but still. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was funny.
It was because South Carolina, where Hunter was not allowed to promote his crack autobiography to black churches. That was the first fake primary that they did, but they made sure that they had run everybody out and they didn't. Yeah, I mean, it was a mess. It's an absolute mess. And that is detailed a little bit in Original Sin, that it was probably one of the big flashing warning signs that the Biden administration, the White House basically pitched that new primary schedule without anybody else in the DNC knowing about it. They just said, this is the new thing. Also, it's for one term. Then we'll revisit it. It's not permanent.
Listen, we owe a favor to Jim Clyburn because he endorsed us in the primary, so we got to do this.
He says he didn't know. Clyburn says he didn't know about the South Carolina move, that they did it without him saying it, which I don't know. I could believe either way that like Joe Biden hated Iowa and New Hampshire so much that South Carolina was, of course, the place where he would move the first contest to. It was like South Carolina and Georgia. Where
he did it because he thought he could win it. He thought he could get the headline, oh, I won the first one.
Yep.
Just selfish son of a bitch.
Yeah. Patreon.com/we're not wrong. It's where you need to go if you want to get a bonus episode of this program. And this is going to be a goodie, friends. Because on the Patreon episode, Jen Briney is going to explain to Andrew Heaton the relationship of Jordan Hudson and Bill Belichick and why it is a big deal. If you don't know what that is, then Jen Briney will explain it to you. But I'm very excited for her to explain it to Heaton because I've been curious Jen's opinion on this. It is an intersection of all things that Jen cares about. The New England Patriots, the legacy of Bill Belichick. It's great.
Just so the listeners understand, I did not pick this topic and I did not say that I would explain it. Justin just wants to hear this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And of course, I had to do no research because I am in fact up on all of it.
Of course you know it. I know my teammate.
I have uncovered that Bill Belichick used to be a coach for the New England Patriots, which is a football team.
I told Heaton to do no research on this.
Did you know that?
To explain everything.
I had already seen pictures of Bill Belichick and his smoking hot girlfriend because that made the like you would there'd be some article on like interest rates might go up. Oh, look at the tits. And like it would just like it's very good clickbaity stuff. So I'd already seen I already kind of knew the very, very, very basics of who these people are.
Well,
but I don't know why it's important. I look forward to hearing from Jen why this is important.
It's really important.
Is it?
So
okay.
Yes, we'll discuss it.
Yeah. That's on patreon.com/we're not wrong. Let's talk about Harvey Weinstein, huh? In a prison interview with conservative podcaster Candace Owens, disgraced producer Harvey Weinstein claims he was wrongfully convicted of sexual crimes and maintains his innocence despite 2 rape convictions. He cites the 2024 overturning of his 2020 conviction as evidence of a flawed trial and insisting that his actions were mistakes, but not crimes. Weinstein denies allegations from Gwyneth Paltrow and Rose McGowan, asserting their claims are fabrications or mischaracterization. He admits to infidelity and poor behavior, but denies criminal conduct. Weinstein also claims that he continues to consult on film projects from prison, saying specifically he gives script notes. He currently faces new charges in New York from 3 additional accusers. Just a refresher, if folks don't remember, because it is a very interesting moment in our culture. Harvey Weinstein stepped down from the Weinstein Company in the wake of the Me Too allegations because he said he was going to dedicate his life to defeating conservative politics in the Trump era, specifically Second Amendment issues. Now he is looking to rehabilitate his image on a conservative podcast after a decade and more of being a Democratic fundraiser and power broker. Jen, is Me Too over? And if so, what have we learned?
I don't think it's over. I do think that it went overboard. I know my line was the Aziz Ansari bad date being called a Me Too situation. I was like, okay, we've jumped the shark.
I think that was a line in the sand.
Yeah, it really was. So it went far, but I think we are at a place now that we as a society can see when a person in a position of power is asking for sexual things and kind of dangling a job in front of you. I think the awareness of that is irreparable. Like that's just something that has been done. And I think when those accusations are made, they're taken more seriously now than they would have been in the past. So I think Me Too served a purpose. I think its legacy is going to be ongoing. And I think that's a really good thing. And so when I look at what we've learned, I think we've learned about instances where this happens. And I think men in particular got to see it in a way that maybe they hadn't really seen it before or seen it as inappropriate. I think that men are, some of them see themselves as victims in this, but they are watching their behavior in a way that they hadn't in the past. They're being more careful. So I do think lessons have been learned, clearly not by Harvey Weinstein. I listened to some of the interview. Oh man, does he think that he was just, he's the victim. He's the victim. And even
he's
when
the fall guy for the movement, he's the sacrificial lamb.
Well, he thinks that there's certain people that went after him because of like movie decisions.
Yeah.
Not the fact that he's obviously a creep. Like his defense, I actually like laughed out loud when I heard this, because the Gwyneth Paltrow story is basically that she wasn't famous at the time and she was in the position to get some movies, and that he basically came on to her and she told her boyfriend at the time, Brad Pitt, and Brad Pitt went up to Harvey Weinstein and essentially said like, don't ever do that
Knock
again.
it off.
Yeah. And then like a semi-threatening way. And so Harvey Weinstein's story is like, all I did was ask her for a massage. And I'm like, how is that normal? Like the audience can hear the way you boys talk to me. Neither of you has ever asked me in all seriousness for a massage. That's just not a thing that happens amongst not only like
I get mad when you touch me.
Yeah, you're very uncomfortable with my hugs.
Yeah.
You push me away very like
tall.
Remember when you pushed me into that planter? That was really mean.
Yeah.
So but yeah, like asking for a massage is not a normal thing to do on a friend level. Certainly not on a, hey, I'm about to offer you a multi-million-dollar job level. So even his defense was like, that's not a defense, you fucking moron. So, and then when it comes to him, like there was 2 juries that convicted him. So I don't need to know the details. The juries know the details and they said he did it. So he's learned nothing. And I think there's still going to be creeps like him. So Me Too didn't solve the problem, but it did shine a light that I think is lasting. And I'm happy that the movement happened.
So there is a bit of a rollback of people that were chastened by Me Too, that lost jobs because of Me Too, that are now kind of back, that have rehabilitated their image to the point where they are top of their heap again. And I would name specifically Mark Halperin, who was one of the co-authors of the Game Change books that we talked about, Original Sin, but one of the most successful franchises in that industry was Game Change. And that was Mark Halperin and John Heilman. They did 2 books about the Obama elections and then they stopped doing them. Not because Game Change wasn't a successful franchise or they had a book deal. It's because Mark Halperin got Me Too'd. And he was out of the media world for a while. Then he breaks the story that Joe Biden is going to resign. He has a morning talk show and now he has a new talk show on Megyn Kelly's network for which he has been rehabilitated. And I don't know the details of the Mark Halperin situation. I know there are people in DC media that have very, very nasty things to say about him because they know some of the women that were involved. But it does feel like part of the shame that came along with those stories, there is a half-life to it.
Mm-hmm. But I can also think of people like Matt Lauer has never been seen again.
Matt Lauer's gone.
Right. Some of them have been shipped off to the island and they're still there. So
they are still in the shadow realm. Yeah, we should keep track of everybody that's in the shadow realm and who has reemerged from it. But I mean, if Matt Lauer did a podcast, I mean, hell, Kevin Spacey gave a speech at Cannes comparing himself to Dalton Trumbo, the guy that was on the blacklist. Like there is, I don't know. Heaton, what do you think?
I think that it was a positive movement. I don't think it's done yet. I'll get to places that I think it needs to move to in a moment. But to build on what Jen said, there were, it went overboard in some capacities. Like at the beginning of the Me Too movement, the operative phrase was believe all women. And even then I was like, well, you can't believe all women automatically and also have due process. You can't do that. And then it got adjusted. Actually, you could thank Joe Biden for this. When Joe Biden was running and he had somebody that worked in his office that said he was getting a little too touchy, then the line became take all women seriously, which I agree with. Mm-hmm. You should take all accusations seriously. They merit serious weight and analysis, but it doesn't mean automatically believe everybody. So take all women seriously.
Believe all women except for Tara Reid. Don't believe her.
Believe all.
Yeah.
Unless
or the 5 women that said he was too touchy and that he smelled their hair and made them feel uncomfortable.
Yes.
And then,
Which I watched him do on C-SPAN, by the way.
Yeah. But take all accusations seriously. I think that is a very good thing that we have. Due process is important. I already believe that. I think that's something that came out of this. And then I really like that you brought up Aziz Ansari, because one of the other things that came out of this was, I hope that when we get into sexual impropriety and sexual harassment, it's not a unispectral phenomenon of just you're kind of bad, really bad, really bad. There's a qualitative difference between Aziz Ansari and Harvey Weinstein. It's not that Aziz Ansari is a low T version of Harvey Weinstein. There's a fundamentally it is sleazy to cheat on your wife. That is a different track than raping a woman. These are different, right? So being able to distinguish that is pushy behavior, that is sleazy behavior versus that is coercive or violent or rapacious or illegal behavior. That's something that we got out of it, I think, by the end of it. And the big takeaway, I think, was we as a society have come very far in terms of equality between men and women, in terms of respect before the law, respect in general, opportunity of deserving equal opportunity. I think we're much better now than we were a century ago. But it turns out that if everybody believes that, and you put guys in shielded positions with a lack of transparency and a lack of accountability, when a bad dude gets in, they're apt to be a monster. And that you have to have something there. And that's why I don't think this is done yet, because I think that there are realms that didn't get touched by this. I think for a variety of reasons, academia needs a Martin Luther to come in and fuck some stuff up. And sexual harassment's a big part of that. The amount of stories that I have heard the last 2 years from both women who are professors and women who are students is terrifying to me. There's a lot of dudes that are in academia that have never been brought to task. They're still there. And go after them. Respect the law, respect due process. But I think that there are a lot of men that are still in these positions of power that didn't get their comeuppance, that need to get their comeuppance. So, I want that to go on. I want due process to be respected. I don't want innocent people to have their lives ruined, but I do want guilty people brought to heel. And I want abusive, predatory men brought to light. In terms of Harvey Weinstein, I listened to the interview as well. And Jesus, he really does think he is a sacrificial lamb. And if you didn't know anything about the story, I would forgive you for thinking it does kind of seem like the Me Too movement needed a evil avatar to murder on an altar. But when you get into any of his actual, when the allegations started happening, I think within a month of allegations happening to him, there were 80 allegations against Harvey Weinstein. I looked into this. 62 of them were sexual harassment. 18 of them were rape accusations. All right, let's just assume half of the women are full of shit. They're just ladder climbing bimbos that think they can make some money. Okay. All right. Now let's assume the remaining half of those women, it's kind of murky. It's maybe they had some drinks and she regretted it later. Okay. That's still a lot of rape allegations and a lot of sexual harassment allegations that are left over there. I mean, there is a overwhelming amount of evidence there. And then when he talks about how the trial got thrown out because it was unreasonable, I'd like to dive into that for a moment, what that means. Mm-hmm. So the reason that was thrown out, why it was declared a mistrial, I think declared a mistrial by the appellate court, is that they had, what do you call them, Malino witnesses, if I'm saying that correctly. So with rape accusations, it's difficult to have an evidentiary threshold in a court of law to overcome reasonable doubt when you've got a situation that involves sexual harassment or rape from 7 years ago. Where are you going to get physical evidence for that? Unless a lady had the presence of mind to file a police report or go to the doctor and get a rape kit, it ends up being witness testimony. That's how that's going to work. Witness testimony still counts as evidence. It needs to, because there are plenty of situations like child molestation where there may not be physical evidence, but there are witnesses. And so it ends up coming down to, is the witness sufficiently credible and compelling that we can go, yeah, I believe this person. So you have Malino witnesses in courts of law where they're almost like negative character witnesses, where instead of coming in and going, he's a great guy, he doesn't deserve to go to jail, somebody comes in and goes, this guy tried to rape me.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. There were a bunch of Malino witnesses. Now, they were not charging him themselves. For whatever reason, they didn't have sufficient evidence. They didn't want to do it. But they came in and they were like, he raped me or he tried to rape me. What normally happens is that the court has to have a line between, is this serving probity? Is this useful as a negative character witness because it's establishing a modus operandi and it's establishing a pattern of behavior? Or are we just making the case that the guy's a shitbag so the jury throws him away on whatever purpose? And that's ultimately what happened. Is the appellate court went, the Malino witnesses were so over the top in terms of the prosecution that we think that the jury was biased by this to the point where they arrived at the position of, he's such a monster, I don't care what the charges are, throw him in jail, which is not fair. You are not being tried on whether or not you're a shitbag. You're being tried on very specific charges, and the appellate court thought that they exceeded that. And the court probably knows what it's talking about. I don't. So let's assume that's true. It doesn't change the fact that the dude's a rapist and a serial predator, and has a mind-boggling amount of women with different experiences that have weird throw-throughs that, anyway, I don't have any sympathy for this dude. I think he got off on a technicality. He's a rapist. He deserves to be there.
Can we talk about the political side of this for a second? That we're in this horseshoe theory where somebody who, and for younger listeners, Harvey Weinstein was the backbone of LA-based fundraising for the Democratic Party for 15 years. He was, Jeffrey Katzenberg.
The Obama one of the Obama daughters interned for him.
Mm-hmm. He was about as popular. I mentioned Ari Emanuel before, Rahm's brother. Harvey Weinstein was bigger than Ari was in terms of fundraising. He was a huge player there. To imagine that he would sniff anything around the conservative ecosphere would be insane if you just traveled in a time machine from the 2000s, 20 years later. Same to Candace Owens, who has made her entire bones talking about the evil boogeymen of the left, specifically in terms of their lascivious crimes against women and young women specifically, for which Harvey Weinstein is accused of preying on. And yet here we are, all smiles, chummy, sympathetic interview with Candace Owens because she's found a lane of being, I'm the woman who will criticize famous women in these culture situations. Mm-hmm. And Harvey Weinstein is like, I got a lot of famous women that I think railroaded me. I would like to talk to you. And so the fact that it wasn't even the point of that interview wasn't East meets West, cultures colliding. Can you believe these two people are talking to each other? But rather it was makes sense. Candace Owens, the woman who went after Blake Lively and Amber Heard, she's talking to Harvey Weinstein. Yeah, makes sense.
It's
that was
brand.
Kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, she's gross.
Also, I'd like to shit on Hollywood for a minute. This whole thing, there's a lot of people that have come out of the woodwork to shit on Harvey Weinstein now. And particularly for the dudes, where were you when all this was going down? And the answer was, it wasn't advantageous to you at the time, was it? And now it can be performative. So I don't know. I think that there's a lot of morally shallow cowards that are in that industry. He's a great example of it. And there was plenty of time for people to blow the whistle on that, and no one thought it was in their interest to do it.
I don't think that that's unique to Hollywood. I think you'll find the same thing in the financial industry and all kinds of corporate boardroom situations. The glass ceiling is kind of everywhere. There's the boys club, and it's something that women who get to a certain level deal with regardless of the industry. So while Hollywood is very public because we know these people's names, it happens.
Well, okay, that's fair, but I do feel like Hollywood's way more self-righteous than some of the other industries, and that's what irritates me. There is a kind of moral preening which accompanies it.
It's also far more libertine in that Hollywood has a very live and let live idea of sex and drugs. That's part of the reason why artists are attracted to some of these hubs. And certainly the Hollywood system is something that has preyed on that, because part of the reason why Harvey Weinstein was able to do what he was doing, and part of the reason why the line even if you're going to look at it from his perspective in a sympathetic way of like, okay, so you have a massive power dynamic. How do you know Harvey Weinstein, the line between a demure starlet who you are raping and who you just think is kind of quiet? Like, how do you know? Or somebody who's kind of into a little rough play? Like, you don't. And that's where, he put himself into situations, even at the most sympathetic way of looking at him, where he was taking advantage of women in a culture and a system that fed them to him. Like there was a pipeline of young girls who were like, oh, I can be in the next movie with Matt Damon if I blow this old man. Like that's what, and look, not to say that that's a situation that is unheard of today. And, there's probably an argument to be made that some women who have climbed the corporate ladder were happy that they were able to take that path to do it. I'm not saying that it's good or awesome, but this is, if we're going to live in the real world, that is a thing that happens. But that is a part of what makes Hollywood, is the kind of people that go risk their lives and their careers to go be famous. Oftentimes also like to do drugs and have sex and sometimes are a little bit more, they have more open boundaries.
Well, and as someone who, went to college here in Los Angeles, I lived here for a decade, and I, come here on all my holidays. Like, I know some actors, and I've definitely gone to the clubs and been around them. So it's like, I've been in the world adjacent. And one thing that I've learned about actors is the really, really good ones, they're good at changing into different people because a lot of times they don't know who they are. And so it's really easy to be a chameleon if you don't really have your own personality. And so a lot of the times these people are very fragile human beings. A lot of times they're kind of introverted, which a lot of people wouldn't expect. And so they walk into these rooms, and even though they are powerful in name and on paper and in finances, inside, these people don't really know how to react. So that's why I get a little let's not shit on the Hollywood people too much, because it is an industry where you're asked to do things that you're never asked to do in other situations. You're never asked in a business meeting, well, are you cool with taking off your bottoms and your top? It's a weird industry to be in, and your morals sometimes have to be wishy-washy to be in it. And not I don't want to say morals. Morals isn't the word for it, but you have to leave the self at the door in a way that I don't think you have to do in other industries. It's a tougher situation for some of these actors and actresses, and the lines are blurry. And so, I don't want to shit all over Hollywood, because it's a weird, unique situation that people that are outside of it just can't understand.
Sorry, I had a whole episode last week where I talked to a very nice man about why Hollywood needs film subsidies, and I'm still angry. I'm just like, no, you don't get our money.
Well, what Cargill was arguing for film
Cargill
subsidies for LA.
Cargill was arguing for film, and I that seems to be the party line for everybody I know in Hollywood. I think it's very bad economics. I strongly disagree with it. I
understand it though, because the subsidies are taking the industry out of LA. And that's what people are concerned about, is that it's an industry that's been huge around
for 3
here.
months to shoot a sitcom.
Exactly. Or not live here at all, or have to move to Canada. It's now getting spread all over the world. Maybe it's not necessarily a bad thing in general, but it's bad for LA. There's a lot of people hurting around here right now. So I understand making the argument.
Well, I think from a self-interested perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Like my industry will do better if you give me money. Yeah. And it'll create jobs too. Like if you were to put a bunch of money into the tractor industry in Oklahoma, I'm sure it would create jobs in tractor manufacturing, but you're taking it from other people. And I don't think taking money from waitresses in Nebraska in order to give them to Hollywood executives in a very glamorous industry.
He's arguing for federal subsidies.
Yes.
Well, that makes sense, because California doesn't really take in a lot in state taxes.
Yeah, and California doesn't have any money either. How could they possibly subsidize their own films? So no, I don't want to shit on Cargill, because he's not here right now, and he is a really nice guy, and he made a very good, articulate case
I'm
for
text
it.
him right now. Say
not one sufficient to move me out of my my defense of the rest of the country's taxes.
I understand state and local subsidies to an extent, but federal doesn't make any sense to me either. So.
Yeah, I don't know why especially considering how much California has branded itself in the Newsomian era as like, oh, we are the mighty Republic of California. Like, we are the 4th largest economy in the world. And it's like, okay, yeah, well then pay people to shoot in LA so they can stop bitching about commuting somewhere.
Or socialize the Hollywood industry. I'm fine with that. Just anybody that earns over $200,000, take their money, put it in a big slush pile. Sounds great. Go for it.
I'm not taking that bait. Let's move on.
We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Send us your emails. We're not wrong pod at gmail.com. Salt in the Eye writes, could an uncapped SALT deduction have a function as a check on the federal government? For example, if the feds are being more terrible than usual and a state is feeling a genuine need to respond with drastic measures, they could jack up state income tax and basically tell residents, write it off on your federal taxes. We'll just use that money to make it awesome here because the feds can't be trusted. There are a million ways this would not prevail in the details, but I find the thought experiment interesting. Mr. Andrew Heaton.
I think your assessment that there's a million ways that it wouldn't work in the details is actually pretty conservative in terms of the reasons it would work. I'll give you one big reason. This would work fine if the federal government could not deficit spend. The fact that it can and does deficit spend would not make this in any way an actual curb on whatever the federal government does. It would just be, let's just add more and more and more to the deficit. So I appreciate the thought experiment, but I don't think it would have any traction.
Jen?
I'm sitting here in one of these blue states.
I've heard of those.
Yeah, which, I do worry about this particular administration punishing this state. And so as I think about this SALT tax, if I were to move home, I kind of like the idea of my money going to California instead of Trump for a while, like that, having that write-off. Like, it's an interesting thought experiment for me because I could see California trying to protect us from, crazy
Strong
ICE
steward
agents or trying to give us, some kind of public transportation. I know that like the bullet train is an issue, but the LA Metro is getting better and better all the time. And they're really ramping up. It's going to, the airport stop is going to open pretty soon, which I think will change things here in Los Angeles. So I don't know. I'm not against it just as a taxpayer. I think Andrew's absolutely right that it wouldn't like stop the federal government from doing anything. But if it could help California make California better, like,
my problem with that is when you do tax breaks are the same thing as subsidies. It's the same thing as a handout from other taxpayers. It's just that instead of taking your taxes and giving it to the guy with the subsidies, we're going to raise everybody else's taxes and not raise his taxes. But it ends up being the same thing. Or what we generally do is rather than raising everybody else's taxes, we'll put it in the deficit and raise everybody else's taxes later. But it ends up being a way of using other people's money to subsidize your stuff. I like the idea of there being a lot of variability between states. And I think that there are good arguments to be in a state with a robust social safety net and good infrastructure. But if you're going to do that, you should have to pay for it. If you're going to deduct it from your federal taxes, you're passing that cost on to everybody that lives in states that has decided not to do that. And I don't think that that's the way to go.
So I'm actually not for the SALT tax. So I understand everything you're saying and I actually agree with it. But at the same time, if the federal government is going to cut off our state from getting benefits that we're chipping into on the federal level, that's where just the reality of what's happening in our government is an issue because California is a donor state. Like we don't get back as much money from the federal government as we put in. So we are funneling money just naturally into red states who don't seem to appreciate our contributions at all. They shit on us all the time. So it's like, at least it's true. It's true. I think we have an email coming up.
Have you said thank you, Alabama?
They have not, actually. They never, ever do. They don't acknowledge that actual math. So when I look at just the reality of how our federal government is working right now, our federal taxes are going towards war in red states. And as a blue state, do I mind a subsidy coming our way, even though it's unfair? I think the situation we have right now is unfair. So I'm not really...
Do you care if it's regressive? Because the SALT tax is very regressive. Like if you're earning a lot of money and you're paying more for a house, you're going to pay a lot more in your property taxes. which means that this assault tax disproportionately helps wealthy people.
Oh, I know. Like I said, I'm not for it.
Yeah.
I'm not for it. I'm just making
the current plan, and we are recording this at 12:22 Central Time, so it's 1:22 on the East Coast. Apparently, Donald Trump is going to meet with the House Freedom Caucus to see whether or not there's going to be a vote on the Big Beautiful Bill Act. It's literally what it's called. But the current SALT deal that is on the table would be $40,000 that you could deduct from your federal taxes.
Insane.
Under 500, if you make under 400,000 or 500,000 per year. And part of the reason this is all being driven by not even
in your state taxes, right? Or state and local taxes.
State and local taxes.
You have to earn a fuck ton to pay $50,000 in state taxes.
That's true. And just to give people the math on this, I just looked it up. Here in California, which we're known to have very high state taxes, it ranges from 1% to 12%. So let's just take the higher end of that of 10%. If you had a $10,000 state tax bill at a 10% rate, like you'd have to be earning six figures to pay that $10,000. And so just like times that, we're talking about people that are making millions of dollars that would actually take advantage of that. Once you get past $10,000, you're talking about people that are relatively wealthy.
Which is why part of the reason why this is being driven, the criticism that I have heard from within the Republican caucus, is that this isn't even really about California or New Jersey. And it's not even really about New York. It's not New York City, because Alex Soros, who brings all of the Democratic politicians to his house so he can take pictures of them like Pokemon in his quest to collect them all and post them on his Instagram. He lives in about as spacious and palatial a place that you can live in Manhattan. And it's the floor of a building. So square footage wise, it's going to be opulent for Manhattan, but it's not going to be as much square footage as you can build a house in Long Island or a house in Westchester, where you have acreage that you can build on. It's still commutable to Manhattan, but it is something that you can build on. But New York state taxes are still pretty high, and they judge their property taxes by square footage. So really the people that are driving this, and there's a reason why Mike Lawler, who won in a Republican district, is the one driving this in Westchester, is because those are the donors that are pissed off. It's not even the people that are in where you have some of the richest people in the world live in Manhattan. It's the people that have moved out of the city, that have built opulent houses, that are getting killed on their property taxes. They're the ones who want a totally uncapped SALT thing. So we'll see. I think they played their cards well, the SALT caucus, because this started at 10,000. And then it was 30,000, and now it's 40,000, where it escalates by a percentage for the next 5 years. But I don't know how much more they're going to get. Like, I think they should just agree to this deal. It's going to get stripped out in the Senate anyway.
Listeners, once again, these very wealthy people that live in Westchester County are not saying that they should pay lower taxes. They're saying you should pay higher taxes so they don't have to, or alternately, your children should. So you're going to come out of your pocket because you're going to have to raise taxes at the federal level, or you're going to do it deficit spending, which means your kids are going to do it. So they might have a point where the taxes being too high, but the way to handle it is not to exempt themselves so everybody has to pay for it.
I mean, what they're actually saying is they're going to cut Medicaid for poor people all over the country to pay for it. So, and that includes people in states like California and New York and Alabama and everywhere. So it's like they actually aren't saying that you have to pay for it. It's poor people that have to pay for it, for being accurate.
Okay.
On Fetterman, Gruntle Grader writes, when people try to imply that we should dismiss someone because they are a disgruntled ex-employee staffer, I mean, yeah, I'd be disgruntled too. That's not really negating anything they've said. How much do you guys mentally take into account the idea of a disgruntled or ex-employee in a story like this?
With this one.
What story are we talking about?
John Fetterman.
You know the guy that wears basketball shorts in the sun?
Last week?
Yeah. Sorry. I have a memory of a goldfish. You guys know this.
I know. Apparently you burned 50,000 calories between now and then, so your brain might have sweated out into the sand.
That's true.
The bit that gives me pause with that particular story in terms of the disgruntled employee and why I am kind of inclined to dismiss it is the one that I'm thinking of is his former chief of staff, who did not come with him from Pennsylvania. He's a Washington guy who publicized the letter he wrote to his doctor. Like, I don't think anybody claims it was leaked. I mean, he just published that letter to the doctor. And I look at that and go, okay, so either A, he's trying to exert sufficient public pressure by basically airing medical records, for lack of a better term, in order to get Fetterman to step down, or he's trying to damage him politically. So I don't know. The motivations for him strike me as a little bit beyond like I'm angry and I'm writing something here. I don't know. That one stuck out to me.
I think it depends on what the story is. And something like this where they're worried about someone's health, I think that's one thing. I don't know. I'm just thinking of like when I was a disgruntled employee, I still didn't try and like destroy the business or anything. I still hate the boss that I threw a handful of change at when I quit. Like, I still don't like her. I won't go into that pizza place, but I didn't report them to the cops for all the drug dealing that was happening out the back door. Like, it's like there's a level of disgruntled, and I think it has to, I don't know. I guess it really depends on what the story is, but something like this where I'm concerned about someone in a position of power. Here's some information about this person's health. I think it's less of a story than if this person got fired and the boss really had no control over other people. Like, I think it's a more nuanced thing than I trust former employees or I don't.
Plus with this one, like, I mean, we just had a whole thing talking about Biden and how, you know, we want the parties and people in politics to step up when there are health problems. So on the one hand, like, yay, bringing up these health problems for John Fetterman. It's what we've been asking you to do. On the other hand, all these same people, when he was running and had these health problems, were like, you know, isn't it terrific that we're finally addressing mental health issues and we're not being ableist? And the change seems to be the politics there. It doesn't seem to be that his condition has changed. It's the interpretation of the condition that's changed.
Yeah, I think it's all about the facts, you know, like either you got the goods or you don't. And I think there's enough to say here with the Fetterman stuff that it's like he has a very unhappy office and we can draw our own lines on exactly why it's unhappy. There's, I think, enough to say that there are people legitimately worried about him. I didn't think it was a total dunking, but at the same time, I think, like I said before, a lot of these people would probably carry water for him if they agreed with him more politically, because I do think that factors into this. Worth saying that this is all a bunch of disgruntled ex-staffers that are fueling the story was the exact line of Naomi Biden, daughter of Hunter, granddaughter of Joe, about the original Sin book. So, you know, there's no perfect story except for my screenplay, which is perfect.
Prostate the musical.
Accountable Andy writes, every time Justin points out a prediction he says he got right, he should also mention that he said Biden would never drop out the day Biden dropped out. That's true. That is true. I published on Substack why Joe Biden will never drop out. Somebody actually sent me in their inbox. I sent that Substack, then Joe Biden dropped out. So the next email that came from me was another Substack I sent saying, whoops, LOL. And then the next email that they got was that I had gone live on Twitch. So it was just Joe Biden will never drop out. Whoops, LOL. Justin is live on Twitch. Yeah, no, I think every once in a while people like to point out things that I've gotten wrong or overstated. I will certainly eat the L on the Biden thing. That was hilariously wrong. But at a certain point, I figured that we had crossed the line of him just being so obstinate that nothing could move him. Some of the other ones, like somebody emailed in a few weeks ago and was like, oh, all the things that Justin was wrong about. And they said that he said that the war in Israel would end in 2 weeks. And I don't think that I ever put a timetable on that. I said that it could not end until Sinwar was dead. It has not ended since then, but that was a thing for which I did not expect it to even possibly end before that. But I don't think I ever said that it was going to end at a certain point. Nor do I really feel that even if they ended hostilities now, that I would consider that an end to anything. I mean, this is the fucking Middle East. Like these conflicts go on forever, and they have gone on forever.
I'll say this about your job, Justin, because unlike what I think Andrew and I do, you deal with predictions Like you're trying to predict the future in a way where I think Andrew and I do more analysis of current and historical events.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so for people to be like, I'm going to hold you accountable for not being Miss Cleo. It's like, okay, you got me, you know, like you've got a tougher gig. I think in that respect.
Number one, I like my batting average. I feel like I do a pretty good job of laying out at least my case for stuff. And when I'm wrong, I will eat the mistakes. Like for example,
that's true.
Last Friday, I said on the show that we were talking about the big, beautiful bill. And so at this point, this is like all this age is like French fries. And if you don't give a shit about the machinations of Congress, then it doesn't matter. But I thought that the budget committee was not going to vote on the big, beautiful bill. And I said so on the show. I said, I don't think it's going to get voted on. I think that they're going to go back to the drawing board and then they're going to vote on it later. I was wrong because they did vote on it. I was right because it wasn't going to pass and it fucking didn't. And then they went back to the drawing board. They voted on it later and then it passed. So it's like, all right, people can dunk on me. That's fine. Hey, look, if you're dunking, you're listening. To which point I say, thank you. Thank you.
You know, something that I have not enacted, but I did learn from Scott Adams, who we mentioned earlier in here, because I followed him quite a lot till he went super Trumpy. And I still follow him every once in a while. But he mentioned that you don't tend to get, with the exception of the listener who wrote in, people don't tend to remember the weird shit you predicted that went south. They just remember the stuff that, so he kind of laid the cards on the table where he's like, if you're in the media business, you want to make crazy predictions on a regular basis because no one remembers the negatives. They just remember like that guy said there was going to be a recession and he was right. And like, they don't look into the fact that you said there was going to be a recession 3 years earlier and you were wrong. Kamala Harris will be the candidate, like, but they don't listen to like where you said that Trump would drop out or whatever. Like there's a lot of people that do this. Justin's being very honest about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I
think that binds you to people. People like it. People like it when you say you're wrong.
I thought Hillary Clinton was going to take it.
Which would say they don't like me because I'm never wrong.
When Biden dropped out, I thought Hillary Clinton was going to swoop in. That was a whole thing where I was like, if Biden's dropping out this late in the game, you need somebody with a machine that could go in now who has debate experience.
You and Dvorak are just always waiting. Hillary is always 2 steps away.
I think she's done.
Waiting to
I think she's done.
In.
But I bet you she thought about it. I bet you there was at least a 5-minute period where she's like, maybe.
Should I iron that pantsuit? Mm-hmm. Am I going to need it?
How old is Chelsea? Chelsea could jump in.
Chelsea couldn't hack it on NBC News. She's not.
I know.
No.
The Bush girl could. The Bush girl's the
Jenna's doing great. Yes. And I actually when I first saw her, I was like, oh, God damn it. We've got the W Bushes now with it. But like, I watched the show because it's on in the gym. She's not bad. She's kind of cute. I like her. So I don't think she's like running for office. I think Meghan McCain might run for office one day.
No, I think she likes being a media person.
But she has strong feelings. I think once her kids are older, I could see her getting in the game.
Yeah.
That's going to be my strong prediction.
She has strong feelings. I'll tell you what, we're in kind of overtime here, but like, I've been kind of grossed out by some of the people that I thought were like really interesting, nuanced thinkers during the Biden administration that were more to the center left or that were like, oh, okay, let me look at this. I have problems with kind of the leftward movement and I'm going to be interesting about it. And then Trump won and they all kind of were like, it reminded me of, remember the dude in the Matrix who wants to get plugged back into the Matrix? Who's just like, fuck it. Like ignorance is bliss. Plug me in. It's like, as soon as Trump won, it was like, you had all this kind of generation of people that I looked at as nuanced thinkers that were like, oh, thank God people on the left won't yell at me anymore. Like now I can just talk totally about Trump and I'll just be like hysterical about Trump. And now the people that I actually like, that are my friends, that are in the communities that I care about, that live in Brooklyn, that live in DC, that live in LA, like now I can just not piss them off. I can go to cocktail parties again. Thank God I can just talk about how Trump's a fascist. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't talk about how Trump's a fascist. That's fine. But it just lacked the nuance of the arguments that they made in the past because they had to think about it because they might actually run into somebody that might disagree with them in those cocktail parties. And I just find that, I don't know. weird.
What are the names that are standing in for these pronouns you're throwing around?
Do we want to do it? I don't know. Should I? Whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'll fucking run into him. I guess there's friends of friends. I like Jesse Singal, and now I can't really pay attention to him.
I don't know who he is. That's no fun.
Yeah,
he's in Blocked and Reported.
Blocked and Reported. He was somebody that was, because he had to talk about things that he disagreed with on the leftward side, he had to be very specific and very nuanced and very educated on some of his writing. And then Trump came back in and he was just like, he was like, oh, fuck, thank God. Plug me back in. Plug me back into the Matrix. Like, let me just talk about, and it's just, his takes are just not as interesting. And I thought he was a really nuanced thinker before. And now I just kind of, it's not that I think less of him. I just don't enjoy his output in the same way.
I prefer Jesse Singal when he's talking about like woke has gone too far. And he's talking about like breaches of due process and like culture war stuff. He's fun with culture war stuff.
Yeah.
I don't like him as much when he's doing policy analysis.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. You asked me for a name. You didn't know the name. And so now we've wasted everything.
Yeah. So I got you in trouble for no reason. I didn't even get the
and now somebody will be like, oh, why are you complaining about this, that, and the other? Anyway. All right.
I got to needle you for a change.
Oh, fuck you. I don't like this. How do you deal with me? We're Not Wrong is a production of Dog and Pony Show Audio. Our editor is Will Saddleberg on PX3 this week. Oh, speaking more about Original Sin, and we didn't even get into the Jake Tapper of it all with Original Sin, which is ridiculous. But ex-CNN personality Chris Cillizza on PX3 this week talking about not only Original Sin and the cancer diagnosis and a lot of some of the stuff, but also he got into, I asked why Jake Tapper, somebody who did not cover himself in glory when it came to the Biden stuff as it was happening, is now running around portraying himself as the savior of all intelligence and criticism for Joe Biden's cover-up with this book that he definitely didn't write. And Chris Cillizza gives some inside of what it's like to be a CNN personality, because I asked, why doesn't he just come out and say I was wrong? I was wrong, and this is how I want to be right. This is my first step to taking a step to wanting to be right. And Chris Cillizza gave me a little bit of a crash course of what it is like to be a CNN personality. If you were to tell your segment producer, this is what I'm going to say, what they would say back. You can hear that privileged knowledge on PX3 this week.
I've got on Phil Graham, former senator from Texas, talking about economics and economic history. He wrote a phone book with Don Boudreaux on economic myths. I'll give you a little bit of a taster for one. Excuse me, fun book on economic myths. Forgive me. I'll give you
slip. Jesus.
I'll give you an example real quick. When you go through the metrics on the Industrial Revolution in terms of pay people had, calories they had, like living standards in general, it went up from where it had been. But you have this weird phenomenon going on at human history at the time where previously, when pre-Industrial Revolution, poor people lived over there. Like the people that were writing books weren't interacting with them. They lived out in the shires and you'd walk by their thatched house and go, that's cute, and never think about it again. And now they're in the cities and people were confronted with poverty. But it's not that it was actually worse, like they were coming to the cities. But there's lots of things like that where you go through and they break down things by the metrics, by looking at the data and kind of overturning a lot of myths in economic history.
All right. Get that on the orphanage. Congressional Dish, Jen.
And Congressional Dish, we just released an episode about the plane crash that happened in January outside of the Reagan National Airport. Mm-hmm. That airport has entirely too many names. But yeah, that crash, there's a lot about that crash that I just don't think it's not like it's being hidden, but there were some details in those hearings that I think we need to know about. It boils down basically to the military is not taking our safety seriously, and I have concerns about the level to which the FAA is willing to police them. And so if you want to hear those details, because these are problems that have not been fixed, listen to that episode. It's fascinating. It's all testimony from the National Transportation Safety Board.
Good stuff. That's it for us. Till next time, for Andrew Heaton and Jen Briney, I'm Justin Robert Young saying we're not wrong.
Joe Biden is.
Now you're doing it? You hated it.
I don't hate it.
Dog and Pony Show audio.